Good morning, friends that are here, and good morning, people who are not with us personally, but are with us as well. This is Palm Sunday, as you might have noticed. Now, not long ago, we had 9 baptisms here at the in the congregation, and that was what Jesus was working for, what he was leaning for people to change their lives and to try to be more like Jesus and do as he wished. So we're quite blessed this Sunday. We have all these people that were baptized. I think most of them are here, and maybe some of you can remember when you were baptized as well. People have been baptized since the time of Jesus. He set the example in the Jordan River, which is the largest river in that area. He was baptized by his cousin named John, and we call him John the Baptist. And so Jesus went about teaching people, setting the example by being baptized, for example, and healing people and helping people. And then after 3 years, he came to Jerusalem, the capital city, to celebrate the Passover. And the Passover is still a very important holiday for people of the Jewish profession. It's a remembrance of their slavery in Egypt, and when they were freed, and so every holiday season on their calendar, they would, as many as could, would come to Jerusalem and celebrate the Passover at that time with a special meal. And that's why Jesus came to Jerusalem at that time. Everywhere that Jesus went, and I'm sure you've heard stories of him feeding thousands of people with just a little handful of food and so on. But everywhere he went, there was this huge crowd. They didn't have the internet, and they didn't have telephones, but they wrote letters, and they mouth to mouth, neighbor to neighbor, and they talked about Jesus. And so there was this huge crowd, just like when we were all crowded up over there to get something to eat. There were so many coming, so many knew that Jesus was coming to Jerusalem that they gathered at the gate, and Jesus said to his followers, "Get me something to ride on so that the people will be able to see me." And so they got a donkey, a small donkey, and he rode on that into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, and the people could see him because he was a little higher up on the donkey. But they were so proud of Jesus, that Jesus had helped so many, and almost everyone had a neighbor or friend that had been helped. And so they raised their arms, and the palm trees were pretty common over there. And so they cut off palms and waved them as Jesus went by, and they said, "Hosanna, Hosanna, Hosanna to God," because they knew that Jesus had come to help them, especially more than he had ever done for others. And so some of them even waved their coats. It's like, I expect their weather was like ours. You never knew if it was going to be warm or cold. Everywhere that Jesus went, there was a huge crowd. And what I wonder is, if these people that gathered, some of them may have been baptized, may have watched others be baptized, maybe they had had a special something happen to them through Jesus. Blind people who were able to see, people that had had some kind of wound that hadn't healed, but Jesus healed them. All these wonderful things that Jesus could do for them. And would these people remember them? Because only 3 days later, Jesus was on that cross. He was bleeding, he was hurting. Would those people stay with Jesus or not? They may have been the same people that were on the streets waving their palms and saying, "Hosanna, Hosanna to Jesus." But then, surprise, Jesus was alive. He was alive on Easter morning. And everyone was surprised, very surprised, because that had never happened to anyone before. And then more and more people heard about it. Did you hear? Did you hear? Did you hear? Jesus did not die. The tomb was empty, and people said, "What's going on? What in the world is happening here? This is Jesus, and Jesus, we know that he was killed by the Romans. One of them had this long, long sword. We saw Jesus bleeding. We saw his friends carry him away to the place where he would be buried. And as the word got around, the people who knew Jesus' friends came to them and said, "What can we do? What can we do?" And at first, the disciples weren't sure. They say, "Well, wait and see," they would say. And before long, Jesus had appeared to them, and he had come to them. And he told them what he wanted them to do. He wanted them to tell people, to tell everyone that he was alive and that he was always there for them. That's what he wanted the disciples to tell. And so people would come to the disciples and say, "What can we do?" And the disciples said, we will baptize you, just as Jesus was. And so baptism began, not just for the disciples and not just for Jesus, but everyone was welcome to be baptized. And this continued on and on, people remembering what they had to do. And so time went on. Let's just jump a couple centuries here. And baptism was going on even over into the United States, which was, of course, quite a ways at that time. And I would like to tell you about a baptism in Canada. And it was just probably a little bit earlier than this, or maybe about this time of year, when the rivers were full of ice. And they didn't have baptismal fonts like we do. They had to use a river or a pond. So here was this very, very, very cold Sunday, and a man named, let's see if I can get his name right here, John Cornish is his name. Some of you may have heard of him, maybe not. But here was this cold spring, late winter morning, and the people that he was preaching to said, well, we would like to be baptized too. Can we get baptized? And John says, sure, he said. He didn't even look out the window to see that snow hadn't all melted everywhere. And so they went to a river. It was called River Thames then. It wasn't I thought at first it was the St. Lawrence River, but it was the River Thames that runs into it. Not that you're interested in geography, but it was so cold. Some people wondered, is this a good idea? You know, because I don't know if you've ever seen a river in spring, but with the ice is melting, the ice is floating along. But this was a big river, and so the ice that had melted away, just flowing down towards the St. Lawrence River, flowing, bumping into each other, just going every which way. These were huge chunks of ice that had broken away from the edge of the river. So they got to the river, and there John Cornish took off his coat and his shirt and what he needed to take off, and stepped into the cold, cold water. And he called to the people, "Come and be baptized." Now, some people, word would travel pretty fast, even without the internet. And so there were people who came who did not, had not been in a church, were not really interested, but they heard, all these people are going to go get in this icy cold water. So everybody wanted to see. So Brother Cornish called to the people on the shore. He said, "Come on," he said, "come on, Jesus is calling you. Come and be baptized." And so strange thing happened. He stepped out just a little bit farther, and all of a sudden, the water was smoother. The ice had moved out, away from the shore. And so some of the people who had thought they would be baptized came down, and he baptized them. And John Cornish said, "Are there others?" And some of the others who were sort of scared, they came down to the water, and he baptized them. And they could see over to the side that there was these huge chunks of ice that were going by, not any place close to them. It was getting dark and night, and they couldn't see very well now. But right where they were being baptized, there was this light. There was this light. They could see. And some of the people who had just come to watch and maybe laugh and point, they decided they would be baptized too. And altogether there were a large number of people that were baptized at that time. And when they'd run out of people to baptize, John Cornish got out of the water and got his clothes back on. Everybody else was getting clothes on, or blankets, or whatever they needed to be warm. And the light that was on the river stopped. And they could just barely see that the ice was coming back in to where they had come to be baptized. And I always thought that was a wonderful story of John Cornish. In fact, there's lots of good stories about baptisms. Maybe some of you can remember some of your, the times you were baptized. You might be able to remember those times. I can. I remember my brother and he was younger and not baptized, and we got in a fight on the way home. But I have two sons, and they are twins. And when they were 8 years old, they were baptized up at the Worthington congregation, which is in Worthington, just north of Columbus. After they were baptized, my oldest son got out of the water and stood there and waited until his brother got out of the water. But my brother was swimming in the baptismal pond. He'd already been baptized. I thought that was pretty funny, but their father didn't think it was funny at all. And I don't know what Jesus thought about it, but interestingly enough, they have been protected all of their lives. The one son, the son that swam in the baptismal pond, he was protected for 4 tours in Afghanistan. He was really, really protected. It was really early in the Gulf War, and there were a lot of those bombs that go off in on the road, and I can't remember what they're called, E something. What's it called? IEDs. Anyway, so my son had anyway, he was driving this Jeep with three officers in him, important people, and so they were sort of first, and they hit one of those and turned the Jeep over, and they looked at it, and the Jeep was okay, except for the windshield, which was just full, it looked like a spider web. And so these important generals and whoever they were, and my son, they turned the Jeep back over, and they drove all the way back to whichever place they were going. And he said, I had to drive like this with Mom, with my neck curved all the way back because of the cracked windshield, but they were safe. I think that's a great story. He says I don't tell it correctly, but that's the way I got it. But when we are baptized, we are promised to be in Jesus' care, and I can certainly testify to that. In my life, I've always been in his care, and he has been guiding me, and often I didn't know what I was doing, and he would help me. So when we are baptized, when we choose to follow Jesus and try to do as he says, we think of those way back 2,000 years ago that waved palms and had joy with Jesus. They threw down their leaves, they threw down their coats. They were so triumphant with Jesus and to be part of his family. And we are lucky too, because we are also part of Jesus' family.